They don't hate you because you are wrong. They hate you because you refuse to bend. Most people believe opposition is a sign of failure, that if everyone turns against you, it must mean you miscalculated, offended, or overreached. But history is quieter than that illusion. Opposition is not always a reaction to injustice. Often it is a reaction to disruption. When you threaten the invisible hierarchy of a room, you don't trigger debate. You trigger instinct. And instinct is older than morality. When everyone is against you, you are no longer dealing with opinions. You are dealing with survival responses. The smiles fade first, then the small exclusions begin. Conversations pause when you enter. Opportunities narrow without explanation. This is not coincidence. It is coordination without words. Humans are tribal long before they are rational. Niccolò Machiavelli understood this with a clarity that still unsettles people centuries later. He observed rulers fall, not because they lacked virtue, but because they misunderstood human nature. He saw that loyalty is conditional, morality is flexible, and fear travels faster than admiration. His conclusions were not cruel. They were precise. When everyone is against you, your first mistake would be to defend yourself emotionally. Defense implies guilt. Explanation implies weakness. Emotional reaction confirms that pressure works. Pressure is a test. When a group isolates someone, they are not trying to correct behavior. They are testing dominance. They are watching whether you seek validation, whether you beg for inclusion, whether you attempt to restore harmony at your own expense. The one who apologizes first accepts the lower position. You were never on trial for your actions. You were on trial for your posture. Most people lose here. They attempt to win affection. They try to prove innocence. They increase kindness. They overcommunicate. They reveal vulnerability in hopes of softening hostility. This is predictable, and predictability is exploitable. When everyone is against you, you are no longer in a social exchange. You are in a power contest disguised as social tension. The group wants to know if you will shrink. They want reassurance that the hierarchy remains intact. The worst response is to attack impulsively. Open aggression unites enemies. It gives them a shared threat to justify their alliance. But submission is worse. Submission confirms their assessment that you are disposable. The only viable position is controlled indifference. Indifference disturbs people. When you remain calm under collective hostility, you create uncertainty. They expect emotional leakage. They expect cracks. When they do not find them, doubt enters their coalition. Coalitions are fragile. They are built on shared fear, not shared loyalty. The moment doubt appears, individuals begin recalculating their personal risk. People rarely remain loyal to a cause. They remain loyal to their own safety. This is where most misunderstand power. Power is not loud. It is not dramatic. It is the ability to remain unmoved when others attempt to move you. Consider why people turn against one person collectively. It is rarely because that person harmed all of them equally. More often, it is because that person represents independence. Independence cannot be controlled, and what cannot be controlled creates anxiety. Anxiety seeks elimination. If you are the one being isolated, understand something uncomfortable. Your presence is destabilizing their comfort. That is not a moral judgment. It is a structural reality. Groups prefer predictability. They prefer those who seek approval. An independent mind cannot be easily pressured into consensus, so they attempt to corner it. When everyone is against you, stop asking how to win them back. Ask why your stability threatens them. People align against strength when that strength exposes their weakness. Your refusal to conform highlights their conformity. Your detachment highlights their dependence. Your silence highlights their insecurity. This is why Machiavellian realism matters. Morality is not the currency of power. Perception is. Stability is. Fear of consequences. If you attempt to defend your morality, you are speaking a language they are not using. When opposition becomes collective, assume there is an architect, not necessarily a mastermind, but someone benefiting from your isolation. Every alliance forms around advantage. Someone gains influence when you lose it. Find that axis. Observe who speaks most confidently against you, who interrupts, who reframes your intentions. who subtly influences others' perceptions. The loudest critic is rarely the most dangerous. The calm mediator often is. The one who appears neutral while shaping narratives is the real center. You do not confront them directly. Confrontation grants visibility. Visibility strengthens their position as your counterforce. Instead, you shift perception indirectly. You alter alliances quietly. You speak less. You act strategically. You create ambiguity around your next move. Uncertainty is destabilizing. When people believe they have cornered you, they relax. When they sense you are calculating, they hesitate. Hesitation fractures unity. There is another truth people avoid. Sometimes everyone is against you because you revealed something about them they wished hidden. You may have spoken bluntly. You may have succeeded visibly. You may have refused compliance. These actions do not create debate. They create exposure. Exposure breeds resentment. Resentment seeks moral justification. So they label you arrogant, difficult, disloyal, cold. The label does not need to be accurate. It only needs to be repeated. Repetition forms reality. If you attempt to dismantle each accusation, you legitimize it. You cannot fight narrative with denial alone. You fight narrative with posture and outcome. When you remain composed and continue progressing, the story weakens. Victory in this situation is not public approval. It is strategic survival. You must accept that being universally liked is incompatible with influence. Influence disrupts. Influence reallocates attention and status. Someone always loses when you rise. When everyone is against you, the first internal battle is against self-doubt. Doubt whispers that collective rejection equals personal failure. But collective rejection can also mean collective discomfort. Machiavelli advised rulers to prefer being feared over loved if both were not possible. People misunderstand this as cruelty. It is not about terror. It is about reliability of consequence. Love fluctuates. Fear of consequence stabilizes behavior. When you are isolated, ask yourself, have you established consequence? Or have you relied on goodwill? Goodwill dissolves under pressure. Consequence endures. This does not mean aggression. It means clarity. People must know that undermining you has a cost. That cost can be withdrawal of access, exposure of inconsistency, or strategic alliance elsewhere. But it must exist. Humans are pragmatic. They align with strength because strength increases their survival probability. They abandon weakness because weakness threatens their own stability. When everyone is against you, they are testing if you will become weak. Silence can be more unsettling than retaliation. When you stop defending yourself and start observing, people grow uncomfortable. They cannot predict your threshold. They cannot measure your reaction. And humans fear what they cannot measure. There is a deeper layer. Often, when a group turns against one person, they are unconsciously sacrificing that person to preserve unity. Scapegoating stabilizes internal tension. It redirects conflict outward. You become the external problem that allows internal rivalries to pause. This is primitive and effective. If you recognize yourself as the scapegoat, understand that arguing innocence threatens the group's stability. They need you to be guilty. If you dismantle that narrative too aggressively, they may escalate to preserve cohesion. Instead, shift the frame. Reduce emotional energy. Make yourself uninteresting as a target. Scapegoats are useful when reactive. They lose value when detached. You are not trying to prove virtue. You are trying to outlast hostility. Time erodes artificial alliances. Most coordinated opposition is fueled by emotion, not long-term strategy. If you remain stable while they exhaust themselves, cracks appear. Individuals begin protecting their own interests again. Patience is a weapon, but patience without awareness is passivity. You must quietly build leverage. Strengthen independent alliances. Increase competence. Make yourself difficult to replace. The more value you control, the more costly your removal becomes. Power is often measured in replaceability. If everyone is against you and you are easily replaced, you are vulnerable. If everyone is against you and you are essential, they face a dilemma. Machiavelli understood that rulers must avoid being despised. Hatred is dangerous when combined with powerlessness. But hatred without capability is noise. Your task is not to eliminate hatred, It is to prevent it from converting into effective action. Control resources. Control information. Control timing. Never reveal your full strategy when isolated. Transparency benefits allies. It empowers enemies. There is also the internal transformation required. When everyone is against you, your empathy must narrow. Not disappear, but narrow. You cannot prioritize harmony over survival. Those who do become examples, not leaders. Observe how people behave under pressure. Notice who distances themselves quickly, who remains silent, who amplifies criticism. These patterns are data. They reveal loyalty thresholds. You are being shown the architecture of your environment. Pay attention. The uncomfortable truth is this. Most people are guided by self-interest, masked as morality. They will justify their alignment against you as fairness, as principle, as collective good. But watch what happens if aligning with you becomes safer. Principles shift. Do not resent this. Use it. When you understand that loyalty is conditional, you stop feeling betrayed. You start calculating. Calculation is not cruelty. It is clarity. If you attempt to win when everyone is against you by being more agreeable, you confirm their dominance. If you attempt to win by open hostility, you unify them further. Winning in this context is subtle repositioning. It is reducing your visibility while increasing your leverage. It is letting others underestimate your threshold. It is responding only when necessary and with precision. Every reaction should have intent. Emotion without strategy is confession. There will be moments when isolation feels heavy. That sensation is biological. Humans evolved to fear exclusion because exclusion once meant death. Your nervous system interprets opposition as danger. Understand this reaction without obeying it. Your fear is ancient. The situation is modern. Separate sensation from strategy. You do not need their approval. You need stability, leverage, and time. When everyone is against you, the temptation is to clear your name publicly. But public defense turns conflict into spectacle. Spectacle benefits whoever controls the narrative. Instead, let your actions contradict their claims over time. Consistency is disruptive to falsehood. There is a reason Machiavellian thought unsettles people. It removes comforting illusions. It states plainly that people are not guided primarily by virtue. They are guided by incentive and fear. If you understand incentive, you understand behavior. Ask yourself what each opponent gains from opposing you. Status, security, alignment with a stronger figure. Remove or alter that incentive, and the hostility weakens. Power is not about crushing opposition. It is about reconfiguring incentives so opposition becomes irrational. This is not dramatic. It is quiet, and it works. When everyone is against you, you are being offered a rare education. You see human nature unfiltered. You see who calculates, who conforms, who manipulates. You see the speed at which narratives spread. You see how fragile loyalty truly is. Most people never see this clearly because they remain comfortably inside the group. You have stepped outside. Do not waste that position by seeking re-entry at any cost. If you must choose between being understood and being effective, choose effectiveness. Understanding may never come. Effectiveness creates its own respect over time. And if it does not, it still preserves you. The final truth is this. When everyone is against you, it is not a sign that you are losing. It is a sign that the game has revealed itself. You are no longer dealing with surface interactions. You are seeing structure. And once you see structure, you cannot return to innocence. You can only become sharper. Because in the end, winning when everyone is against you is not about defeating them. It is about refusing to collapse. It is about mastering yourself so completely that their pressure reorganizes around you instead of breaking you. And when they finally realize you were never cornered, only observing, the hierarchy shifts without announcement, not because they like you, but because they understand quietly that you are no longer the safest target. And in a world governed by self-interest, that is the closest thing to victory you will ever need. What unsettles you most is not their hostility. It is the realization that you are alone. Isolation forces a confrontation most people spend their lives avoiding. When support disappears, the comforting illusion that you were valued for who you are dissolves. You begin to see that much of what you called connection was conditional alignment. As long as you reinforced the group's narrative, you were safe. The moment you deviated, the atmosphere shifted. This is not cruelty. It is structure. Human beings are governed by two silent drives: the need for security and the need for status. Security keeps them attached to the group. Status determines their position within it. When you become a perceived threat to either, you trigger defensive coordination. Understand this carefully. When everyone turns against you, it is rarely about morality. It is about perceived displacement. You disrupted someone's invisible hierarchy. You occupied space that another person believed was theirs. Perhaps you did it through competence, perhaps through independence, perhaps through refusal to submit. It does not matter. What matters is that your presence altered their internal ranking system. And humans protect their rank with remarkable intensity. The mind does something subtle when threatened. It rewrites reality. Your confidence becomes arrogance. Your silence becomes secrecy. Your decisiveness becomes manipulation. This cognitive reframing allows others to justify their hostility without confronting their insecurity. People do not attack what is harmless. They attack what reflects their weakness back at them. When everyone is against you, you are serving as a mirror, and mirrors are rarely loved. There is another layer beneath this: envy. Envy is not loud. It does not announce itself. It disguises itself as critique, concern, or collective judgment. Envy emerges when someone possesses a quality others desire but cannot. Claim, strength, independence, influence, control. Rather than admit envy, the mind searches for moral superiority. If they can label you unethical, selfish, or dangerous, they can neutralize their own inferiority. You become a moral problem instead of a competitive threat. This is why arguing morality is ineffective. You are fighting the wrong battle. The true conflict is status anxiety. And status anxiety cannot be resolved with explanations. It can only be resolved with recalibration of power. Observe how quickly individuals align against you. Once a dominant voice initiates criticism, this is herd calibration. Most people do not evaluate you independently. They evaluate the social risk of defending you. If supporting you threatens their position, they withdraw. Not because they believe you are wrong, because they believe you are unsafe. Safety governs loyalty more than truth. This realization may harden you. It should refine you instead. If you understand that people prioritize safety, then you understand the key to reversing isolation. You must become a source of stability rather than volatility. Stability is not softness. It is predictability of response. When attacked, you respond with measured precision. When provoked, you do not escalate impulsively. When accused, you do not over-explain. You remain consistent. Over time, this consistency destabilizes the narrative that you are chaotic or dangerous. Humans recalibrate around predictability, but there is a deeper psychological war occurring within you. Rejection activates ancient fear circuits. Your mind will attempt to regain belonging at any cost. It will suggest compromise, apology, self-reduction. You will be tempted to make yourself smaller so the group can feel larger again. If you obey this impulse, you will be accepted temporarily, but you will no longer respect yourself. And self-contempt is more corrosive than isolation. Machiavellian realism demands something harsher. Choose long-term leverage over short-term comfort. If regaining approval requires surrendering autonomy, the approval is a trap. When everyone is against you, you must audit your own vulnerabilities. Where do you seek validation? Whose opinion still penetrates your composure? These are access points. Those who sense your need will apply pressure precisely there. The individual who remains emotionally neutral under collective tension becomes psychologically unpredictable. Unpredictability shifts power. There is a phenomenon rarely acknowledged. Groups unconsciously test resilience before granting respect. If opposition breaks you, they confirm your inferiority. If opposition sharpens you, they adjust their calculations. This is not fairness. It is dominance assessment. Even those who criticize you are watching carefully. They observe whether you fracture privately, whether you gossip defensively, whether you retaliate recklessly. Every misstep strengthens their alliance. Silence, on the other hand, breeds doubt. Doubt weakens coalitions. Coalitions survive on shared certainty. Remove certainty, and individuals retreat to self-preservation. You must also recognize the psychology of the instigator. There is often one person who benefits most from your isolation. They may not appear aggressive. They may frame themselves as reasonable, even protective of the group. But their influence expands as yours contracts. Why would they target you? Because two dominant figures cannot occupy the same psychological space. If you project autonomy, you challenge their centrality. By turning others against you, they reaffirm their control. The solution is not confrontation in the open arena. Public battles reward spectacle. Instead, destabilize their certainty quietly. Strengthen independent relationships. Increase your value in ways that do not require their endorsement. When others perceive you as indispensable, the instigator's narrative weakens. Influence is rarely destroyed head-on. It is eroded indirectly. There is also the matter of fear. People fear what they cannot predict. If you have shown that you are willing to stand alone, you introduce uncertainty. Most individuals would rather conform than risk isolation. Your tolerance for standing apart exposes their compliance. Compliance resents courage, but courage without strategy is martyrdom. Do not become a symbol of resistance. Symbols are admired but sacrificed. Instead, become structurally necessary. If everyone is against you in a workplace, master your craft until your removal becomes costly. If in a social circle, cultivate connections beyond that circle. If in a family dynamic, build independence so emotional manipulation loses leverage. Dependency is the root of vulnerability. The deeper psychological shift is internal detachment. You must stop interpreting opposition as personal betrayal. View it as data, information about hierarchy, insecurity, and influence patterns. When emotion fades, clarity increases. Clarity allows strategic response rather than reactive defense. There is an uncomfortable paradox. Sometimes, the fastest way to win when everyone is against you is to appear to lose temporarily. Strategic retreat is not surrender. It is repositioning. Withdraw from arguments you cannot win publicly. Conserve energy. Observe fractures within the opposing group. Time reveals ambition conflicts. Those aligned against you will eventually compete with each other. When that happens, neutrality becomes attractive. If you have remained composed, some will quietly realign. Not out of loyalty, out of advantage. You must be prepared for that moment without bitterness. Accept their return without naivety. Trust behavior patterns, not apologies. Human beings repeat incentives. Another psychological layer is projection. Often the traits they accuse you of are traits they suppress within themselves. If they call you manipulative, examine whether you are simply strategic while they hide their own strategy. If they label you cold, perhaps you are simply less emotionally dependent. Projection allows them to disown qualities they fear in themselves. Understanding this prevents internalization. You stop absorbing accusations as truth and begin analyzing them as confessions. The danger, however, is overcorrection. Some who study power dynamics become paranoid. They see manipulation everywhere. They isolate preemptively. This is weakness disguised as intelligence. True control is calm. You do not assume everyone is an enemy. You simply recognize that under pressure, self-interest dominates. This awareness changes how you move. You speak less about your plans. You reveal less about your vulnerabilities. You observe who seeks information and why. You test loyalty subtly by sharing minor details and tracking their movement. Power is information asymmetry. When everyone is against you, reduce the information they have about your intentions. Increase the information you gather about theirs. Over time, hostility loses its emotional charge. It becomes a pattern you can map. Once mapped, it becomes manageable. You may never regain universal approval. That is irrelevant. Universal approval belongs to the agreeable, not the influential. The real victory is psychological sovereignty, the ability to remain centered while others attempt to destabilize you, the ability to choose responses rather than react compulsively, the ability to calculate long-term positioning while others exhaust themselves in short-term aggression. When you master this, something shifts. Opposition begins to feel less like attack and more like confirmation. Confirmation that your presence carries weight, that your decisions alter equilibrium, that you are not invisible. Invisible people are rarely opposed. Remember this with precision. When everyone is against you, they are unified by a perception. Change the perception strategically and unity dissolves. Or outlast it, and self-interest will dissolve it for you. But if you collapse internally, they will not need to defeat you. You will have done it for them. In the end, winning when everyone is against you is not about converting enemies into friends. It is about becoming so structurally stable, so internally disciplined, that their hostility reorganizes itself around your immovability. They may never admit respect. They may never apologize. But their tone will change. Their caution will increase. Their calculations will include you rather than dismiss you. And that subtle shift, that quiet adjustment in how they measure you, is the only acknowledgement that matters. Because in a world governed by self-interest and hierarchy, the one who cannot be psychologically cornered cannot be permanently defeated. There is one final truth you must accept. If everyone is against you, it means you are no longer playing a small game. Small players are ignored. Small minds are tolerated. It is only when your presence alters the balance that resistance forms. Opposition is not always proof of your righteousness, but it is almost always proof of your impact. The mistake would be to seek emotional resolution. You will not receive it. Those who turned against you will rarely confess insecurity. They will not admit envy. They will not acknowledge status anxiety. The human ego protects itself too carefully. Instead, they will rewrite memory. They will claim it was never personal. They will pretend it was necessary. Let them. Your victory was never meant to be emotional reconciliation. It was structural repositioning. You learned who calculates under pressure. You learned who aligns with strength and who aligns with safety. You learned how quickly morality bends when status is threatened. You learned how narratives form and how fragile coalitions truly are. Most people never see this layer of reality because they never risk standing alone. You did, and isolation refined you. When everyone was against you, you were forced to detach from approval. You were forced to examine your own need for validation. You were forced to replace emotional reaction with deliberate response. That transformation is irreversible. Once you see the mechanics of power, you cannot return to innocence. The world stops looking like a debate of good and bad. It starts looking like a shifting map of incentives, fears, and influence. You stop asking who is right. You start asking who benefits. And that question changes everything. You no longer crumble under collective disapproval because you understand its source. You no longer chase acceptance because you understand its price. You no longer expose your full intentions because you understand the value of uncertainty. The hostility that once felt suffocating becomes predictable. Predictability removes fear, and without fear, you are difficult to control. This is the quiet transformation that matters. Not public redemption, not applause, not restored harmony, but internal sovereignty. When pressure no longer dictates your behavior, you become structurally dangerous to those who rely on pressure as a tool. That is why the truly strategic individual does not seek to be loved by everyone. They seek to be immovable. Because in every hierarchy, the one who cannot be emotionally manipulated becomes the axis others must calculate around. If everyone is against you and you remain composed, patient and precise, something subtle occurs. The same people who once dismissed you begin adjusting their tone. Their criticism softens into caution. Their certainty turns into restraint. They may never express respect openly, but they will behave as if it exists. And behavior is the only language that matters. In the end, winning when everyone is against you is not about defeating them publicly. It is about outgrowing their influence over you. It is about becoming so internally disciplined that collective hostility loses its leverage. You were never meant to escape opposition. You were meant to understand it, because once you do, you realize something colder than comfort and sharper than validation. They were never united by truth. They were united by fear. And the moment you stopped fearing them, the balance quietly shifted.